Welcome to the Legit Football NFL podcast. Brian McFadden here, co-founder of Legit Football. It is Monday, February 27, 2023. We've got the NFL Combine just around the corner, just starting now. They're doing interviews, they're doing health tests. We're actually seeing some workout results later in the week. And you know I'm not doing this by myself. I've got my man, Kevin Phillip Fox, my partner in prime. How do you like that? Just came up with
that.
it.
10 out of 10.
We got the Combine coming up, Kevin. There's going to be stuff coming out. We teased that last week, whether it's prospects or teams that front offices, this is where deals happen, but we don't have any of that yet. So we thought today would be a fun show. We'll tackle some headlines and a pretty fun main topic.
Oh, dude, the main topic today is going to be crazy. I already told you I got my lawyer mode on. You guys are not going to even recognize me. I'm going to be using big words and all that fun stuff. But no, it's any day we get to talk football is a good day. And Monday, it's rainy where I'm at. I don't know about you, Brian, but I'm looking for an escape from the horrible weather. So let's do it. Let's dive into football.
I don't need a weather excuse to talk football, my friend. It could be a beautiful day in Northern California.
If it's raining, we're distracting ourselves from the rain. And if it's sunny, we're celebrating the sun by talking football. It
always comes back around. I will say this. You teased the whole lawyer outfit with regards to our main topic today, and I'm a little disappointed I'm not going to get to see it. So
I was thinking about it.
You got my hopes up. Next time, yeah. I want to see a wig, like one of those old-timey English wigs with the white curls.
I'd pull it glasses. Off, too. I'll just perm my hair and dye it.
That's even better. That's even better.
Let's do that.
Kevin takes it here, and then he takes it all the way to the mountaintop.
It's the only way.
Kevin, it's not just you and me today. We have a very special guest. Let's bring in Greg Silver, host of the Screaming from the Sidelines podcast. Greg, you heard that Kevin's going to dye his hair and curl it, and you might be thinking, what did I just get myself into here? How you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. I think I might join Kevin on the dyeing hair endeavors.
But then I have to do it.
Party.
I can't be the one guy not dyeing my hair in this scenario.
I mean, here's the thing. As you can see from the jerseys in the back, I do a lot of focus on basketball and the NBA, which I'm really happy that that's heating up, but I still religiously follow football. So it was great to connect with you guys, and now I'm really thankful you're having me on the show, and I can't wait for the main topic, but I won't spoil it yet.
Should we tease it? Should we just not even mention what we're going to talk about? I mean, if people are listening to the podcast or watching the video, they're going to see it in the headline.
I was going to say, yeah, anybody on the live, spoiler alert. If you don't like spoilers, don't look at the title.
Right. I see Takedo Luna already lurking in the chat, so I don't care if Takedo gets spoiled. He likes to troll us, and he's a sad Raiders fan, unfortunately. So let's go ahead and say we are going to be making our case for the 4 Hard Knocks eligible teams. It's going to be Kevin, Greg, and myself, and Anthony Wayne, our producer from behind the scenes. We're letting him come to the front just for that segment, so he will choose one of the 4s. We're each going to make our case. And you know what? Whoever's in the chat, maybe you guys can decide which of us made the best case. Otherwise, we're just going to have to awkwardly at the end try to make it seem like one of us had the best argument. And Kevin doesn't have his hair dyed and curled, or else he would automatically won. So We'll be doing that. We're going to get to some legit headlines. We'll do our main topic. We're each going to make a case for the 4 Hard Knocks eligible teams. You guys tell us who wins. But yes, let's go ahead and start with the top headlines from the Legit Football newsletter from the past couple of days. We'll start with Jalen Ramsey. Most of our headlines are from today. Quote, very likely to be traded. According to Tom Pelissero from NFL Network, the Rams have already been talking to other teams. Sources believe Ramsey is very likely to be dealt in the coming weeks. Rams completely seeking to remodel their roster. I mean, there's not a lot of teams that need it more than LA at this point. We know that they mortgaged their future. They racked up the credit card bill. Well, the bill is due. The biggest drop in history from a former Super Bowl. So they're going to need to move some of their stars. Kevin, this seems like an obvious move, so I don't think we should debate the merits of it, and more we can talk about maybe some potential teams that could be fits for Ramsey.
Yeah, I'm thinking, the merits of it are it's a slam dunk. Since we got Greg here, we got the jerseys. I figured I'd bring a basketball. It's a layup. It's a slam dunk. It's easy money. You gotta get Jalen Ramsey out of there. He's still got some good years left in him. I think at least a couple. I personally don't think he's been playing at like that top 3, top 5 corner lately. I know that he was a Pro Bowler, but what does that really mean anymore? I know
86.4 PFF grade last year. There were a couple. I know what you're talking about. Visually, he didn't quite have the dominance. He did get beat on some notable games and big moments, but his overall profile for the season still a pretty darn good corner.
Yeah, so I would like to say really quick to Cato, friend of the show, electric in the chat as always. We appreciate you. I'm gonna do this for Takedo. I'm a podcaster for the people. I want everybody to know that.
We're a democratic process here.
Exactly. I'm starting my lawyering.
Now we really do need those great wigs.
Takedo shouted out Detroit as a suitor for Ramsey. Now let me just say this. I did the legit football TikTok, which I do every weekday. Make sure you check those out. And
put it on Twitter today, by the way. It's everywhere. We got IG, we got YouTube, we got TikTok.
I'm just so sick of seeing my mug all over
it's
social
too late,
media,
man. It's all out there.
It's out there now. But you know what? Today's headline had Jalen Ramsey likely to be traded, and then a couple headlines later, Detroit in the market to improve their cornerback room. So I'll throw it out there for Takedo, and I'll give Greg the alley-oop there. So I'm going to say Detroit as a potential suitor, given that they're looking to bolster their cornerback room. Greg, where do you see Jalen Ramsey going?
So I know we're not going to discuss whether we think this is a good idea or not because I said it. It's a slam dunk. But I just want to backtrack a little bit before I say what I'm about to say, which is Jalen Ramsey is a great player. He's a hard worker. He's smart. He's really competitive. But this guy is not a locker room presence if you are on a losing team. He's be a disaster for the talent he is. He's very passionate. I'll just say that and keep it nice.
Play with.
So I think he's.
Do you remember Jacksonville? Like what he brought in, like a Brinks truck or whatever, right? When he was trying to get paid. I mean, this is not a subtle guy.
He's nuts.
No, he's not a subtle guy at all. But he's so good that any team contending is going to want to keep him. And if you're a team that's good, then his mood's probably going to be better. So I think the Lions, just off of a football perspective, could be a good fit. Their secondary was a little bit of a disaster. However, they're a young team. In fact, with the release of Michael Brockers, their oldest player is now 29, which is not
Crazy.
old for a giant roster in the NFL. So I kind of like a Dallas Cowboys fit. And I know people love to make fun of the Cowboys. And I don't think the Cowboys are necessarily a Super Bowl team, but they're going to be good enough and relevant enough to get through a full season. I think that he likes the bright lights. Him and Diggs could make enough plays to where it's a flashy, fun story. I'm not saying it brings them a ring, but for the course of September to February, that seems like a fit that could work for a Jalen Ramsey personality.
I could dig it.
That's so probably going to happen that it
so
bothers me.
Exactly what the doctor ordered for the Cowboys.
There's no way Jerry does not pay the biggest amount of these possible free agent suitors or trade suitors to get a Jalen Ramsey. When that was one of their weaknesses, they've got the pass rush. They've got the superstar in Micah Parsons. Diggs is great in spurts. He can be a playmaker, but we all know that last year when he led the league in interceptions, he also led the league in yards allowed. So he's definitely a hit or miss guy. I would love to see him on Detroit. I think that would be more fun.
Mm-hmm.
And Anthony, yes, I see your camera on. I'm going to let you come in and give your opinion in a second. I'm a little surprised because Anthony puts together the legit headlines that he did not put the Lions headline in here. But maybe that's because he thought he could tie it in. I would like to see him on Detroit, but man, Greg, I can't. Of course he's going to be a Cowboy.
Exactly.
It's just a foregone conclusion. Anthony, come in and prove us wrong.
So the reason why I didn't want to put too many Lions headlines is because I don't want to look power hungry.
Oh, respect.
You know what I mean?
What a guy.
I want to focus on the.
But see, now it's you omitted them so conspicuously, so now the manipulation comes.
What a
into
sacrifice!
I'm a genius. So Jalen Ramsey to the Lions sounds like it's almost magical to think about because the secondary was just so awful that adding a veteran like this, someone who's seen a Super Bowl, someone who's seen so much football, to be able to kind of mentor the young guys on the Lions secondary, make them even better. We don't have to worry about drafting a cornerback in the first round because we have Oruwariye, we have Okudah. So let's bring him in as sort of a mentor, kind of teach them some things, and improve that secondary. Go to Super Bowl 59 or 60 and have Jalen Ramsey win another ring in Detroit. That's a bit a couple steps ahead, but I think that this would be we have the cap space now, especially getting rid of Brockers. The youngest guy in the team is 29 years old.
That's
so
crazy.
Now, oldest, my bad. Jalen Ramsey is going to become the oldest if he gets signed or traded. And LA needs this. LA needs the picks that they traded for Stafford. They need it back. They want
I think
it back.
Anthony needs
Ramsey,
this. I think that's who needs this.
I like Jalen Ramsey. I always have since he was in Jacksonville, and I think that he can really add some pizzazz to that secondary.
I will say, you guys know, anybody who listens to the show and everybody who's been on the show, there's one word that I always come back to, and that's culture. So I like Greg's point about Detroit's young, upstart regime and all that. So I do see the potential, with all due respect to Jalen, damage that he could do to that culture, because he's a bit of an I guy. He's a bit of a me guy. And so I definitely could see that being something that the regime in Detroit might want to avoid. But, his talent speaks for itself. You said it, 86.4. That's pretty darn good. That's a pretty darn good PFF grade. So
in a league without a whole lot of elite cornerback play these days, right? So it's not like there's a huge group of top tier pass defenders. So the fact that you're at 86, even if he's not as good as he was at his prime, that's a guy you pay a lot of draft capital.
There is a case to be made for sure that he's worth the risk of whatever he might do to the culture, for sure.
Absolutely.
Armand, popping up in the chat, always nice to see you as well. I was going to tell Anthony to go away, went away on his own. That worked out nicely.
What a guy.
Vikings, Chargers. We mentioned the Vikings in the Legit Football newsletter. Maybe a return to the Jags for Ramsey. That would be fun from a story standpoint, but I'm not sure it would actually happen. I would love to see him in Detroit to wrap this thing up, but I think Greg hit it right on the nose that, of course, he's going to be it's like Dion. Dion went to Dallas. Yep. Ramsey's going to go to Dallas. It just makes way too much sense.
It does.
And I'm not happy about it. All right, let's go ahead and move on to Cincinnati Bengals nearly certain to release running back Joe Mixon. Insight comes from The Athletic's Jay Morrison, who writes that a Mixon release, quote, feels closer to a certainty than a mere possibility. Bengals need to clear cap space. We've mentioned this on previous shows, Kevin. They've cut this year Burrow and T. Higgins that they need to extend. Next year, Jamar Chase, which will be even more expensive than Higgins. You've got some giant contracts. You still have to re-sign safety Von Bell, tight end Hayden Hurst, and linebacker Jermaine Pratt. Is there any chance, Greg, I'll start with you on this one, that the Bengals would keep Mixon, or is this just like the Ramsey deal, a foregone conclusion? They would save $7.3 million in cap space by letting Joe Mixon walk.
Just from my perspective on the outside, I think it makes a lot of sense to let him go, and here's why. Not going to justify the Burrow extension because that's the obvious thing. He's probably the second best quarterback in the league entering next year. Higgins probably deserves the extension and is a guy you want to keep in a pass-heavy offense. And Chase, of course, is going to get extended barring some extreme circumstance. Joe Mixon has had his issues off the field, which haven't been a huge deal since he entered the league, but he just had an offseason headline recently. And then if we're going to talk larger picture, let's look at some of the last Super Bowl winners or even Super Bowl participants and tell me if any of them had an elite running back. Kansas City was running with Isaiah Pacheco, Jerick McKinnon. The Rams had a coming back from injury Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson. Damian Williams on the Chiefs before that. Sony Michel on the Patriots. And I could go on and on back to Denver when they had C.J. Anderson, who I think they signed mid-season. So Joe Mixon is a good player, and I'm not trying to discredit what he brings. But P. Ryan showed that he's a very capable backup when he got thrown into the starting role a couple of times. And if you have a limited amount of money and you really want to devote what you can to these resources, pay these young guys who got you from the most irrelevant team in the AFC to a Super Bowl and AFC championship on the brink of another Super Bowl. I think it's no question you have to value in today's league. Quarterback, receivers, don't worry about the running back.
Yeah, Kevin, I'm completely in agreement with Greg. It's all about positional value these days, and you're certainly not going to not pay Burrow and Chase. You probably should pay Higgins as well because it's not even as good to just have one stud wide receiver in today's NFL. You're going to need multiple unless your name is Patrick Mahomes. Then apparently it doesn't matter, but
and
he
Brian,
is obviously...
Also, just to add, Chase had a lot of injuries this year, so Higgins was that guy for a chunk of the middle of the season.
Correct, yeah. Besides the fact that it's great to have those two guys out there to not have any particular one get all the coverage, but also if one gets injured, to have another stud that you can rely on. I didn't realize this actually until recently. Pirine, as great as he's been, he's a free agent. So I think Cincinnati, maybe they can get him back on a decent deal and then draft somebody. Kevin, your thoughts?
Yeah, that was exactly what I was going to say. In today's NFL, I mean, I don't know if Greg knows this, but Greg, I'm a diehard Buffalo Bills fan. And I've watched third-round running backs after third-round running backs after third-round running backs carry the load and be good to great. I mean, maybe not great. Good to above average to good, I'll say. That's more of the tier we're looking at for Bills running backs. But I'm at the point now where I'm like, yeah, I kind of understand. You know, it seems like having a great running back is sort of just a luxury in the NFL. It doesn't really seem like it's that much of a necessity. And even to your point, Greg, yeah, the last 6 Super Bowl teams haven't really had any. I would say, yeah, I think you used the word elite. I would agree. There wasn't a single elite running back in that bunch. There's a handful of good ones. I guess the jury's out on Pacheco. I think he could be good.
Well, but he's also a 7th-round rookie with that kind of salary. I saw a stat on Twitter maybe a week after the Super Bowl about the contracts that the Super Bowl winning running backs, whoever led that team in rushing for the years, and the biggest one was Leonard Fournette with the Bucks, and it was only, I want to say, like $5 million. You don't see any of these monster running back contract teams that are even making it to the Super Bowl, let alone winning it all. So even if Pacheco does become a superstar running back, they're not paying superstar running back money for him now.
Yeah, it's all about that asset management, right? And Mixon is great. I mean, I don't think any of the three of us are saying he's not. I do think that it's going to be hard for them to replicate his production from that position. But at this point, you don't necessarily really need to, I think. I think Pirine can do a thing or two in the passing game if they're able to bring him back on the cheap. And like I just said, 3rd-round running backs get the job done for elite offenses. We've been
7th-round running backs get the job done.
Yeah, undrafted. Hey, we might as well. We're just pushing it back.
So Armand put in the chat, and this is a great pivot on this question. And by the way, I mean, Armand and Takedo, you guys know this, but anybody who's in the chat, or if you're listening just in the podcast, check us out on YouTube. We will pivot based on questions that we get. So, Armand, if Mixon is released, where will he land? So let's play with that one, Kevin.
Yeah, that's a really fun one. My answer is going to be watch the revolving doors of running backs. And one of these teams we're going to be playing musical chairs this offseason with running backs because there's so many stud running back free agents. So watch for the revolving door. Wait until the music stops and see who doesn't have a seat. And I think that might be where Joe Mixon ends up because Josh Jacobs.
I think you mixed up like hotel revolving doors and musical chairs.
I mixed it up. No, it was a
and
perfect weave.
It was perfect. Okay,
there's chairs in the doors, Brian.
If you had the gray curls, I would take you more seriously, and I wouldn't doubt your analogies.
I think watch for the Raiders, the Giants, any of those teams that.
Hold on, let's unpack that. So Raiders, Josh Jacobs obviously is a free agent. All signs report that he wants back, and they would want to sign him. So you're saying if they don't sign him, they would bring in Mixon?
I think any team that ends up without their guy is going to be
Giant. So I see. You're listing the teams who didn't get their first guys. They're hoping to get Mixon on a discount.
If they don't, I think those two examples were probably. I think I would project Saquon and Josh Jacobs both to end up back home. But if they don't, I would watch for those teams because there's so many. I don't know if you've seen. There's like a graphic that's going around with all the free agent running backs. It's like 20 names deep, and like 15 of them are like they're like I would say great running backs or good to great running backs. It's
at
a
least
crazy
starting
year.
Caliber, yeah. And it's a deep running back draft class.
That too.
So
Bijan.
That's going to really color teams' decisions when they do this. Greg, you nailed it on with the Jalen Ramsey to the Dallas Cowboys. If Mixon is released, which I think is a foregone conclusion at this point, it seems, where would you think would be a good spot for him to land?
So I hate to give the annoying disclaimer of we just have to wait and see what happens in free agency. I think that
that's not what we do. Let's
call
guess.
your shot.
Call your shot.
But I do, for some reason, the Carolina Panthers pick kind of calls out to me
I
because
like that.
they got rid of their best player, who was their running back, in the middle of last season. Frank Reich is now their coach, and he had a strong running offense a couple of years ago. Jonathan Taylor had a career year. And third most, that division stinks. Okay, the Bucs are not going to be as good now that Tom Brady's gone. The Falcons do not threaten me at all, and the Saints are kind
unless
of
they get Lamar, but
right.
We're not diving into that. We did that.
Yeah,
on
I was
Friday.
gonna say, and also Greg, don't disrespect Tyler Algier. All right, Brian might jump through the screen. That's his
Algier
boy.
is my guy. That is my guy. Called him in the preseason.
No, Algier was really good, but the Marcus Mariota Desmond Ritter thing that's not going to scare me.
It's a tough duo.
Yeah, so I kind of like Panthers.
That's a good call. I do like that.
I like that. So they did get surprising production from the running backs, but Chuba Hubbard is not a starter. He's a great kind of secondary attack running back. Dante Foreman was good, but he's, I think, 27, 28 at this point. You bring in a guy with Mixon, who's around the same age, but Mixon clearly at his best is going to be a better option than Dante Foreman. Frank Reich is going to want to establish a solid running game like he had in Indy so that he can take pressure off whichever most likely rookie running back they bring in. Greg's 2 for 2 today on team placements. I got to say.
Crushing it.
Absolutely love that. Let's talk another pending free agent. Jakobi Meyers could get Christian Kirk-like money this offseason. This is according to ESPN's Mike Reese, who covers the Patriots closely. Meyer may attract a deal in the range of Kirk, who got $72 million over 4 years. This is Jakobi Meyers we're talking about here from the Jags last season. Meyers has quietly emerged as one of the league's most reliable possession receivers, caught 67 of 96 targets for basically a 70% catch rate, 804 yards and 6 touchdowns, only 26 years old. I think this, Kevin, is a case of there's not a lot of other wide receivers on the market, and the top guy gets the Kenny Golladay prize.
Absolutely. And, we've been saying for weeks, I've been banging the drum for Jakobi Meyers. I absolutely love the way he wins. I think slot receivers in today's NFL are worth their weight in gold. And Jakobi Meyers has been so reliable for Mac Jones the last couple of years. And just imagine, I'm pretty vocally not the biggest Mac Jones fan. I think imagine Jakobi Meyers with one of those top 5, top 10 quarterbacks in the league. Oh my goodness.
Like Josh Allen?
Yeah. Hey, I've been
you
saying
mentioned it on the TikTok today.
I just throwing it out there. I'm trying to speak it into existence.
Hey, Kevin, I just got Khalil Shakir in my dynasty league, so I kind of need him to step up.
I was gonna say you don't want Jakobi then, because that's gonna be his role. Khalil can win that slot role if they don't bring in some real competition. But Jakobi Meyers represents potentially he's the biggest domino in the free agency wide receiver pool. That being said, there's a lot of big named wide receivers potentially on the market, so that's a whole nother thing. But as far as Jakobi goes, as far as free agent receivers, that is the domino as far as I'm concerned.
Takeda brings up a good point. Myers, former quarterback, by the way, but was the one responsible for the interception and where Mac Jones tried to take the charge. Greg can appreciate that as a basketball
That was my favorite play of the year, man. That
was awesome.
So let's play the placement game with Myers as well. Greg, he's been
2 for 2.
That's why I'm gonna just keep going to him. He's
ride the hot hand.
Right. He's gonna win the Hard Knocks placement too, and then we'll just give the trophy to Greg.
I don't think I'm gonna go 3 for 3 here, because I think that a major piece on this team might be gone, but it's one of the teams that we see at the bottom right there, and it's kind of a good fit with the Ravens if Lamar somehow stays, because the Ravens have all these guys with big upside, pretty bad low side or injury problems, like Rashad Bateman, Devin Duvernay. Mark Andrews is very solid. Jakobi Meyers is very solid. He is not the best receiver in the league, but he's good. He can catch the ball. He's reliable.
Great route runner.
Great separator.
Good first down.
And the Ravens' big problem has been a consistent passing game and coming back in games where they're forced to throw the ball and everybody knows they're going to do it. So I kind of like it from that standpoint, but if Lamar Jackson's on a different team, then you can just forget that take as a whole.
I actually love it because you got Rashad Bateman coming back from injury. He can be more of your alpha receiver, which Myers isn't, but Myers can be an additional safety blanket, which has been Mark Andrews' role, or Andrews has kind of had alpha role, the safety blanket role, the lead blocker, you name it.
Yeah.
But I like that. Once again, may not be a slam dunk. I don't know. I don't see him in Baltimore, if that makes sense. Like, I just see Jalen Ramsey in a Cowboys uniform.
Right.
But I like the idea behind it, Greg. I do think that would be a logical fit from Baltimore's perspective if they do keep Lamar.
I will say, I think smart money is on him returning to New England. I will say that. I do think that that's likely.
I'm not sure. So
you don't think so?
There's been no indication that New England has prioritized it. I'm not saying that's not smart for Myers, but New England is not known to pay their guys on second contracts. They had that 1 year, 2 years ago where Bill opened the wallet.
Spending spree.
1 year and they closed it right back up. I can imagine he's going to make so much more on the open market. If this is the one time you can get paid for a guy like Jakobi Myers, who has been solid but not spectacular, you got to take it. I don't see a scenario where he comes back to New England personally.
I hope he leaves. I hope he leaves. I'm just not sure. I mean, he seems like the kind of guy who buys into the Patriot way. He seems like that kind of a player. He's a super process guy. He's a super. He seems like he's signed his name on the dotted line for the Belichick regime. But that being said, we've seen guys get out, not unscathed. They have their horror stories from being coached by Belichick. But
Takedo, the Raiders fan, does not want Josh McDaniels to sign another former Belichick disciple.
That's a bad take, Takedo. Not this. Don't.
But you've got Hunter Renfrow. I don't know that Hunter Renfrow and Jakobi Myers are.
But Hunter Renfrow is a huge trade candidate. I could definitely see Hunter Renfrow being traded with his contract and all that stuff. If they could re-up, because Jacoby's, you're right, they're not that different. They win in very similar ways. So and Renfrow is what, 5 years older than Jakobi?
He looks 25 years older, but
come on,
he's younger than he looks. But I think he was balding when he was in elementary school. One of the teams listed on there as possible Myers, it's going to be a nice transition. Carolina Panthers. Joe Person says they should target a top tight end in free agency. So they've got Joe Mixon now because Greg put them there, so it's going to be real. So now they have to target a quarterback, obviously, in the draft, and how about a top tight end in free agency? Person of The Athletic refers to the Panthers tight end unit as a major weakness. He thinks the team should target players like Mike Gesicki, Dalton Schultz, Evan Ingram, and Austin Hooper next month. Carolina got very little receiving production out of the tight end position last season. Ian Thomas, only 21 catches. Tommy Trimble, 19 catches. Steven Sullivan with 2. The Panthers are tight on cap space, so they might need to go to the draft for this. Greg, we'll let you kick this one off. Any thoughts on the Panthers and tight end weapons they should add in free agency?
Well, thank you for bringing up the cap space, because I was going to bring up a guy I think you can get value on for not a terrible contract, and that is Austin Hooper. As a vet, I think when he had Matt Ryan in Atlanta, Hooper was awesome. And I say this genuinely because I do not root for Stanford guys. My parents are Golden Bear alums. So Hooper was really good. And then I thought he went to Cleveland and was heavily underutilized. Even in that year, they made the playoffs. Tennessee, he didn't do anything this year. And Ryan Tannehill had a severe drop-off in his production. So yeah, the Panthers don't have a great quarterback right now. I'm not going to act like Sam Darnold has come back from the dead, even though he had a couple of nice moments at the end of the year. So I don't know if Austin Hooper becomes a Pro Bowler going back to Carolina, but I think this is a guy who is probably better than his stats would show for in the last couple of years. And if you don't go to the draft, I think that's probably your best option for getting bang out of your buck.
Yeah, I like that. And I was looking at the Panthers tight end room. Brian just had it pulled up on the screen. And, I think they have 3 tight end 2s. Maybe Sullivan might be a tight end 3, but I think Thomas and Tremble both are fine tight end 2s. I was actually going to say I kind of like Tommy Tremble, to be honest with you. I think he could be something in the league. Maybe not yet, or maybe not.
It hasn't been yet. This is his 3rd season he's going into, I believe.
Yeah, I like his I like his player profile. I like the way he plays. So I think Tremble is a name to watch in the future, but not as a starting tight end. I'm a big tight end 2 guy. I think you need to have a good tight end 2 in today's NFL. And I think both of them are tight end 2s. Out of those names, I think Ingram is too expensive.
I think the Jags are going to franchise tag him.
I think he's a lock to go back. I wouldn't be surprised if Dalton Schultz ended up back in Dallas as well. But that being said, we've seen the player carousel. I mean, the NFL, there's never been more player turnover, so I wouldn't be surprised.
How about Gesicki? I'm not sure how much Gesicki is going to cost, especially coming off the season he had, which wasn't necessarily his fault. That McDaniel offense, that Shanahan offense, is not built to feature the tight end. So he's had his worst statistical year since his rookie season.
Worst gritty of all time, right?
Is that what that was supposed to be? I think we lost Greg. He's malfunctioning.
It was the Gesicki gritty.
I knew it. I got you. Yeah, I actually really like Gesicki as a player, and I do think, to be honest with you, Brian, cover your ears. I think it's been blasphemous how Miami's been using him. Like, honestly, insane. He's so talented, and he's such a weapon.
We had the number one offense for half the season. I'm not upset with
but it might have been for the whole season if you used Gesicki properly.
Oh, okay.
But no, it'll be interesting to see where he ends up, because if he doesn't stay in Miami, I think he could be a candidate for a huge increase in work. I really think that that's a great name, actually, Brian, for the Panthers, if they can.
Hey, I got one right.
I like that.
Greg's got 2.5. I've got one.
I like that. I do.
Kevin, let's cue you up one. We do have one viewer question I want to get to before we get to the main topic.
Absolutely.
As a Buffalo Bills guy, does Jordan Poyer go to a state that doesn't take half his pay?
I don't know if you guys saw the quote, but Poyer said he was on an first of all, I just wanted to say this is my father. Thank you for listening, Father.
Okay,
PK Martini. Shout out to my dad. He told me he was going to be listeing. I was hoping he wasn't going to harass me in the chat. I can accept
Too late.
this.
You're getting harassed.
I can accept this question. But Poyer, yeah, that's a tough one, Dad. Oh, man, if we lose Poyer, I'd be so upset. But he did say on a podcast, he was being interviewed, and he said, I'm looking to go to a team in a state that doesn't take half my pay because of taxes, obviously playing in New York State. So yeah,
Jaguars?
Dad, I was thinking Miami is the team that's getting a lot of Poyer buzz right now, Brian, and I think it would be an awkward day on the pod if you guys poached my favorite defensive player. But yeah, I would say if I were a betting man, I would put money on Poyer not returning to Buffalo.
All right, I just wanted to get that question in. I had no idea it was your dad. The fact that it was just made it that much sweeter.
Shout out to
Let's
Pops.
go ahead and take this opportunity to go to our main topic. This is going to be fun, a little bit different. We're not just bringing up a topic and generally discussing it in round robin style. We are going to have a bit of a debate, and the main topic is, I teased at the top of the show, Hard Knocks candidates. And there are 4 of us. Anthony, our producer, Anthony Weiner, go ahead and bring yourself in. There are 4 of us and 4 teams. So the NFL has 3 sets of criteria to determine which teams cannot be chosen to appear on the show. Number 1, if a team has appeared on in the last 10 years. So sorry, Anthony, Lions are not getting on 2 years in a row. As fun as that Lions team was last year. If a team has a first-year head coach, so anybody who has a rookie head coach or just a head coach that's coaching for the first time on that team can't be qualified. And if a team has reached the playoffs within the previous 2 seasons. So there are only 4 teams who are eligible based on that criteria. We've got the Chicago Bears, who's going to be represented by fellow NFC North guy Anthony Weiner. The New Orleans Saints, we're going to give to Mr. Kevin Phillip Fox. The New York Jets, our good friend and prognosticator Greg Silver. And then I will finish it up with the Washington Commanders. Anthony, you don't get to speak as much as the rest of us on the pod, so I am going to let you kick this off. Why should the Chicago Bears be the team that's chosen for the 2023 Hard Knocks on HBO?
All right, so to start, this is a team that's going to have a possible $120 million in cap space and a first-round pick. So depending on what they do with...
By the way, real quick, that's over twice any other team in the league.
Yeah, and that's the first overall pick. So even more fuel to the fire. We're helping his case. We're his counsel.
Yeah, okay, you're right. We should stop. We're against him. Boo. Boo Bears.
So if they make these moves, if they do what they need to do and pick up who they need to pick up, that's, to me, going to be a unique perspective on growth. And I think that we're going to see how a team can start from the bottom and make it to the top. I'm not saying the Chicago Bears are going to make it to the top, but we'll at least get to see a little bit of them trying. And I think that this is a unique opportunity because of what they have, whatever signings that they're going to get moving forward, whatever draft picks they're going to get moving forward. And you have a star in Justin Fields. We talked about it in an episode earlier that Kevin and I last Monday, that Justin Fields is not the problem in Chicago. It's the team around him. And we discussed that a little bit, explaining how even the receivers were dropping his passes. They had no run game, no offensive line, and the defense doesn't help either. I mean, allowing 56 touchdowns by other teams all season. Justin Fields was constantly holding up the team, trying to do the best he can. He led in both rush yards and obviously pass yards, but he himself led in rush yards more than his running back did. And he's doing a lot of the work. And I think to see this team kind of try to build around him, that's going to be kind of cool to see on a TV show. And I think that that's going to be interesting.
Love it.
Is that enough? Is Justin Fields enough? I love the idea behind it. But the Hard Knocks is about everything, all the little players, the guys trying to make the team. They do have a lot of young players, which could be interesting. Justin Fields, from what I've seen, the personality doesn't exactly pop off the screen. So there's my counters. Look, I'm counter arguing, Kevin. All right, and guys, by the way, if you're in the chat, we're going to go to you at the end, whoever's still in the chat, and give us your votes on which of us is right. So that was Anthony and his pick on the Bears. Greg, we're going to go to you next. The New York Jets, which is probably, if we're doing odds, probably the odds-on favorite to be chosen. So you got a little bit of a layup, but let's hear your argument for the Jets on Hard Knocks.
Well, I did do an Instagram poll about an hour and a half ago just to gauge what the public
Very
would
scientific.
say.
Nice.
Yeah, pretty small sample. It was at 20-something votes, and half of them went to the Jets, and so I was happy about that. But
he's like, case closed.
Yeah, that's all you need.
That's all.
He's a podcaster for the people. I can respect that.
People with Hard Knocks love the extremities, and they love these polarizing opinions. So you got to love it or hate it. They got to be great or bad. And the Lions last year were the perfect fit because they were extreme in that they didn't win a lot of games. They were extreme in that America really wanted to root for them, and Dan Campbell was this inspirational guy despite everything they went through in the previous season. I love the Jets, and I honestly think that they overachieved this year with the young roster. Robert Saleh seems like a complete culture guy, like Dan Campbell. He really seems to have the players bought in. They have so many good young players, not one, but two rookies of the year, and Sauce is so good. And lastly, the quarterback situation is a complete mess, which is what people want on TV. I mean, the two worst quarterbacks in the league this year were both named Wilson, and I think that is damn near undisputable. I think the Jets are great. It's a big market. I think, like Chicago, they have the big market, but unlike Chicago, a lot more personalities and notoriety and just bigger names. Because it's New York, everybody's going to freak out, good or bad, on what happens. The Giants already had their great run last year, and they're not eligible, as Brian mentioned. So I think the Jets is a perfect fit for this year's Hard Knocks, especially if viewership is what you want.
By the way, I specifically wanted to do this argument now as opposed to after Rodgers decides, because if Rodgers goes to the Jets, this argument is null and void, and it's like, of course it's going to be the Jets.
Right.
Give me a break. Takedo brings up a good point. For the Hard Knocks, the Jets get on if Zach Wilson's mom's best friend is showcased on it. LMAO.
That's wild, Takedo.
I mean, you've got Nathaniel Hackett. Like, what is he going to say about his time in Denver? There's so many storylines there. On top of having a talented team, offensive rookie of the year, I'm actually arguing for Greg, whereas Anthony, I was like shutting him down. Defensive rookie of the year, you have Breece Hall, who probably would have been offensive rookie of the year if he hadn't got injured. And then you add on either Aaron Rodgers or Derek Carr. I should stop talking now because I'm supposed to argue against. All right, Kevin, you get the New Orleans Saints. Put up a good case so that the Jets don't run away with this thing.
Okay, so for me, I want to let the viewers in on a little secret. This is a little BTS legit football.
Behind the curtain.
I'm pulling the curtain back. I want everybody to see, So we had 4 teams, right? We have 4 panel members. I had actually accepted the challenge of taking the last pick in the who do we get to argue for draft because I figured it would be fun. It'd be a fun challenge. Okay, so I'm looking at the things, and I have really good cases for all of them, except for the one that I ended up with, which is why this is so fun, because I'm gonna sit
You did that to yourself, by the way. You said,
and
"Oh, they're all great. I'll just go
happy to
last."
do
I'm like, "Okay."
It's all about a challenge. You know what I mean? I absolutely love a challenge. So I'm gonna give you the stick of dynamite that's sparked. I'm gonna give you the house of cards that we're gently placing one more card on. I'm gonna give you the 32 car pileup. The New Orleans Saints would be so fun to be on Hard Knocks because you genuinely don't know what direction this franchise is going to go in. They are at such a crossroads right now. They have such volatility. They have a second-year head coach who is an absolute defensive mastermind. Now, his defense hasn't necessarily been that great. They haven't been the problem, we'll say. I would say the Saints, they've been just a tough team for a couple of years, and a lot of it has to do with, I would say, quarterback play more than anything, which is another case for me because we're looking at a potential for a new quarterback in New Orleans. So first of all, if they stick with their quarterback room that they have now, Jameis Winston is one of the most entertaining personalities in the league. I don't think anybody can deny that. If you guys have seen the viral, unintentionally funny Jameis Winston moments, if you haven't, just Google it. He's a lunatic. He's so funny. Second of all, Andy Dalton, that's the red rifle. He's old school. Now, what I'm thinking is, Brian, I'm losing you. Do you want to? I think you might be muted.
Yeah, I muted because you're talking about the California weather. The sun decided to come up from behind the clouds, completely messed up my green screen.
You're kidding.
And so I muted to try to not to distract, and I ended up being a distraction anyway. Okay, go ahead.
You're back.
I was saying Dalton is a free agent. He's not in.
There you go. Probably, yeah. Then we'll say probably won't be back. You have
actually Winston's a free agent too.
You're kidding.
No, Taysom Hill's the only quarterback on.
Upon doing my research, it seemed as though there was a possibility Jameis would be back. I don't know if it's on a new deal or what. 3 draft picks in the top 71 drafts, in the top 71 picks, that's a lot. And for them to have a first-round pick is monumental because they just send them away for no reason. So I think personalities like, Cam Jordan, if he doesn't get traded, personalities like Alvin Kamara, if he's able to be there and all of his legal fallout. There's a lot of stuff going on. You got stud young players like Chris Olave. You have a lot of names on the Saints that are going to be interesting and fun to watch. And I would say, last but not least, the coup de grace for me, the possibility of Derek Carr being their quarterback and what that could mean. It could reset the franchise. They've been in a dark, dark era. And I think if they land a big fish free agent quarterback like a Derek Carr, they could be an entirely new team, and it would be fun to watch the dawning of a new era on TV.
Takedo in the chat says, if the Jets get Carr, I'm buying a Jets jersey. I'm a ride or die Carr fan. Are you going to do the same for the Saints if the Saints get Carr? So Kevin says that the New Orleans Saints are one Derek Carr away from being a relevant team.
It'll help.
It can't hurt. I'll say this. All right, I am going to close it up with. You guys have any quick objections, counters?
Yeah, let's get some feedback here. That's a good case, right?
This dude did his research. He's like, I'm going to get the crappiest. I'm going to put an actual argument.
Exactly.
Yeah, I just want to commend you for doing the research. I think that the Saints on paper is the hardest task here. It was probably my last pick, but you make a great point with the quarterback mess. I actually think the fact that Jameis and Dalton are free agents helps your case because do they get a Jimmy Garoppolo? Do they get a Derek Carr? Do they draft a guy? Do they just try to run this thing with Taysom Hill? I like the Jets because their quarterback situation is a complete mess. You kind of had it with the Saints.
If we have some insight on what their plan is with Taysom Hill too, that would be fun. Can you imagine the meetings where they're like, it's like, this is a Taysom Hill meeting. We're just gonna sit down for an hour and draw up plays for our guy, and like that would be a fun segment. Also, I mean, I like what you said, Greg, about the free agent quarterbacks helps the case, but if you lose Jameis, you lose some entertainment value. That's just what it is.
Did you mention the Kamara incident? Did you?
Yes.
Okay.
The fallout.
So, yeah.
If there's going to be any, and also I mentioned Cam Jordan, but there was a legit football headline that he was going to generate some trade buzz. So there's a lot of. That's why I said it's sort of like a stick of dynamite or a 32 car pileup. Like if you might not be able to look away if this thing goes off the rails, it might be.
I would say my counter is I don't think they're close enough to being a 32-car pileup, and they're also not close enough to being competitive. They're a little bit middling right now, which is a problem. They're one of those teams that maybe they should tear it all down and build it up, and that would be interesting if they go that route. I'm not sure they do. The Saints have been so used to being successful. I don't know if they have it in their blood to just strip it all down to parts and start from scratch.
So if you think they're middling, then a Derek Carr addition would further their middling status, or would it get them out of middling?
Carr doesn't. Sorry, Takeda. Carr doesn't elevate any team. He doesn't necessarily drop a team, but this is a guy that if everything's around him is good, he can absolutely help the team take the next step. But he is not going to single-handedly turn around
That's fair.
A franchise that couldn't win the worst division in football and finish behind the Panthers in the division when all was said and done.
I can dig it. I like Carr a lot.
Cato with the beautiful language. Saints are more like a man trying to run in high heels. I don't know what that means, but I could get the visual.
A lot of torn ACLs.
Yeah, I see where you're going. All right, let me wrap it up with the Commanders. I'm actually feeling kind of good about this one. So there's a lot of juicy storylines. Let's start with cancer. Ron Rivera beat it. Yeah. We're going to get to hear some stories, personal stories from Riverboat Ron about how he beat cancer. On the other side of it, is Rivera on the hot seat? He's going to go into his 4th year with Washington. No real success. Hasn't been terrible, but middling, like we said with the Saints. And you've got perhaps the head coach in waiting, Eric Bieniemy, offensive coordinator, finally getting out from under Andy Reid. What if this team isn't very good, but the offense is good? Does Bieniemy get elevated? Do we actually get to hear from Bieniemy himself? Maybe he gives interviews on how his experience has been interviewing for various head coaching jobs over the years and not getting them. I'm sure there'll be some undertones about the racial injustices he's faced as a result. There's a guy who got shot and not only survived, but came back to play like 5 or 6 weeks later in Brian Robinson. You got a star receiver, because all these good Hard Knocks have the snazzy receiver, Terry McLaurin, a guy who's going to be fun to watch. He's going to be making those slow motion highlight catches that they always do on Hard Knocks. You've got some young up and coming defensive talent who we haven't seen. Chase Young, he was a guy who's supposed to be a whatever the word is, amazing up-and-coming pass rusher. Yeah. Transcendent. Thank you. Greg is just all day, man. He's just draining those threes from half court. Transcendent defensive talent who has suffered some injuries. We haven't fully seen that. Oh, and by the way, this is Washington. This is a team that had a different name 3 or 4 seasons ago. This is a team that has had such a bad history to the point where they're now looking to sell the team. Dan Snyder has the team for sale. What if that's part of Hard Knocks? Do we get Jeff Bezos coming and checking out practice and alluding to making a bid? Come on. There's lots of great juicy storylines here.
Amazon.
Hard to argue with the Jets, I know, but we don't have to deal with Carson Wentz. We dealt with him on multiple live NFL shows. He's gone. He was released today.
Caught today. Crazy.
Yeah, you got Sam Howell, so you got the young quarterback who had one good game to end the season. I don't know. There's a lot to like about this Washington team. When Kevin decided to just throw it up and say, I'll take whoever's last, I'm like, good, I'm taking Washington.
I like it, Brian. I think you made a lot of great points. I will say I think you neglected to mention huge hats, like comically oversized hats. That's a Brian Robinson thing. He kind of started that trend, and then it went kind of crazy. They're awesome. Those massive hats. I'm a big fan. Also,
big hats. Check. Apparently, that's
big hats. You got to include big hats. I love what you brought up about Bieniemy. I think I watched a clip of him responding to some negative comments from Shady McCoy, Bills legend Shady McCoy. I thought Shady gave Bieniemy kind of a hard time, and Bieniemy had this really, really poised, in my opinion, really, really head coach sounding response about, hey, I can't pay attention to that because that's not within these walls. Like, I'm focused on making the Commanders better. And I was like, let's go. And then I saw a clip of him meeting Terry McLaurin and telling him about what the plan was for him. And I was like, wow, this, like, you've seen those videos, Brian. We've clowned on McDaniels for his Tua video. Oh, I think you're the best quarterback in the league, yada yada. This felt so genuine. He was talking to Terry McLaurin, just telling him like, you're the number one. We're going to use you like a number one, and that's exciting, man. Terry McLaurin's one of the most, I would say, it's tough to call him underperforming because he performs a lot still, but I think...
Well, and you think of the quarterbacks he's played with, and he still produces. What if he had a great quarterback?
He's got a lot of meat on the bone. I'm excited
whether it's
to see.
Sam Howell taking the jump, or maybe they just crash and burn and they get to pick number 1 overall next year and get
fun.
What is it, Caleb? Who's Caleb Williams?
Caleb Williams, he's the guy. Everybody's fawning over.
We're already looking at 2024. We haven't even done the 2023 draft. All right, so let's turn to the audience that is in the chat. Guys, feel free to let us know who you think made the best case, or if you just want to say, no, it's going to be this team, regardless of the cases you guys, these, jabronis made. We'll go around the room while we wait on the chat to do that. Greg, do you think it is going to be the Jets, or were you just hyped up about your...
I do think it's going to be the Jets. I think a lot of your Commanders arguments were great. The only thing I would say is the difference between the two franchises is that half of the arguments about the Commanders are not irrelevant, but they're older news. I think the Jets surfacing up a little bit is just a little bit newer and a little bit more relevant for this offseason. That's probably why I would go Jets overall. So...
Makes sense. Anthony, your choice. Who do you think will be on Hard Knocks?
So I think you convinced me to decide that the Commanders might. If I were on HBO and I had to choose the team to go Hard Knocks,
I have no idea what I was just trying to do.
That was good. You crushed that.
If you were with us in a boardroom and pitched that, I would say, okay, you're right. The Ron Rivera thing, and then the name change and the putting it up for bid, I think that those are good arguments for the Commanders to be on the show. I think it's just entertainment value enough to be on the show. So you've convinced me.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think I'm rocking with the Saints. No, I'm just kidding.
I was going to say, really? No, come on.
I'm definitely 50-50 between the Commanders and the Jets. And I think I think the Rodgers is the tiebreaker, right? If Rodgers goes to the Jets.
Yeah.
But do you think Rodgers might be the type who wouldn't respond well to the Hard Knocks life, or do you think he would just soak it up? What do you guys think?
Oh, I think he likes the attention.
You think he would be all about it?
Oh yeah, he'll spout about how he's one with Mother Earth and blah blah blah. I don't need interviews but
he would come off like he hated it at the same time.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
He would side eye the cameraman. He would side eye the cafeteria workers. He can't help himself.
Yeah, I think I would like to see Washington. I mean, I can't imagine it not being the Jets, just to be real here.
Right.
Especially if Rodgers go. I would say this: if for some reason they don't get Rodgers or Carr, and they're left rolling out, because Mike White is a free agent, so they're left rolling out Zach Wilson again or bringing in like Jimmy Garoppolo, that might be enough to push Washington, especially with the whole sale of the team. There's a lot of juicy news there. But I'm going to go out and say that I do think it'll be New York, because I do think that it'll get two of those. If it's Rodgers, it's a freaking slam dunk. Of course, the New York media with Aaron Rodgers there and how good that team was, minus the quarterback position. We did get one vote in the chat. Takedo Luna voted for the Bears. So Anthony, where he's just like, it's Justin Fields. That apparently swayed at least one person. Takedo says, my vote is the Bears with Rockstar Justin and the 3 first rounds for the number 1 pick, assuming that would be a heck of a haul if they get that. And the cap space.
In a year with a quarterback like Bryce Young staring you down, 3 1s for the first overall seems like that might be the going rate.
Although Bryce Young, who might be my size, so
that's true.
I mean, there's small quarterbacks, and then there's Bryce Young. So we're not going to get into that. We got the combine coming up. We're going to have lots of draft talk. I quickly want to ask. We're not going to go into this. We're not going to debate it now. We're going to talk about it maybe in the next week or two if the Bears don't trade the number 1 overall pick. But do you think, without much context, and Kevin, I'll start with you, is there a possibility the Bears trade Fields instead of the number 1 overall?
Yes. I say 100% yes. I don't think that's a good move. That's all I'll say. I wouldn't if I were them, but I do think that there's a chance. I would say at non-zero, I would say between 15 and 45% chance that it's Fields instead of the 1.
Anthony. We're going around the clock here.
I don't think they're going to trade him. I think that when they drafted him, they had in their head that they're going to keep him around as their franchise.
Except this regime did not draft him. Different GM, different head coach.
I mean, the trade capital is, through the roof, because you're going to get whatever you want for him just because of what he's able to do. Even on a team that has nothing, he was able to at least get... His showmanship was there. He made plays, and I think that means a lot. If they do trade him, they're getting a lot for him. If not, they're going to want to build around him. So it's either of those.
Greg.
Completely agree with Kevin. I would say that if I had to guess, Fields stays in Chicago, but I don't think it's out of the question at all, especially because he made enough plays this last year to where somebody could theoretically offer just a ridiculous package for Fields. So I wouldn't say that it's not going to happen, but I think probably Fields in Chicago.
Yeah, same thing. If they're going to listen, because why wouldn't you? If somebody gives an absolute haul, like I think it last week, Kevin, we talked about what if the Ravens traded?
Yep.
Like how could you say no to that if you're the Bears? If you're getting, well, I guess it depends on what you have to see or send back. But do I think it happens? No. And we saw reports actually earlier today that they are shopping that number 1 overall pick. So I do think that's what they do. But if it takes the other direction, we will certainly discuss it here. Greg, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Really quick, before we wrap up, I'm sensing the wrap-up tone. I just wanted to say my dad wasn't able to get
I have a tone when I'm wrapping up, yeah.
My dad wasn't able to get his vote into the chat, he said, but he said his pick would be Washington because their front office is a train wreck, their owner is a train wreck, and it would be fun to watch. So, Brian, I think you might have cleaned us up in that debate.
I got 2 votes.
You might have taken us to school in that debate. But anyways, I just wanted to get that in there.
Yes, and thank you, father of Kevin Phillip Fox. Kevin Sr. Oh, nice. You're a junior. Right. Oh, that's right. That's very valuable intel I will certainly bring up later. Yeah, thank you guys, everybody who has been in the chat, who's involved. Takado, Armand, our usuals, Kevin's dad, whoever else was hanging around. Always appreciate it. Greg, thank you so much for coming on. We're definitely going to have you back on again to tell us what's actually going to happen because you clearly have a crystal ball or something.
Yeah, Greg, you are the man, dude. Appreciate you.
Watch Anthony, all age like milk, man.
I can't wait.
And we'll still have you back on to say, like, dude, why did you get it so wrong?
Call your shots. I love it.
Anthony, always awesome having you produce, but come in front to talk about your Lions and make a case for the Bears. It was at least good enough to get 1 vote.
Solid.
We will be back here, as we always do, on Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 Eastern, where I imagine we'll be diving into some of the news that's coming out of the Combine. We'll start to see workouts on Thursday through Saturday. So over Friday and Monday, I'm sure we'll have a lot of news to digest. That's it. Any last words, Kevin?
Yes. First of all, I'm so
Of course,
excited.
That's why I queue it up. I'm like, Kevin's got more to say.
Oh, of course. You already know. No, dude, you really, really got me salivating over this Combine stuff, man. The NFL it's a 365-day sport. I cannot wait for Friday's episode to talk more about and all the headlines that'll be coming out this week. Yeah, it's gonna be a good week.
Greg, any plugs for where people can find your stuff?
Yeah, you can. I didn't put my Twitter handle up. I'll do that next time. But it's Greg O Silver, so GregoSilver, and my podcast is called Screaming from the Sidelines, where I talk a lot about the NBA. So if you're craving some basketball in addition to football, I got you covered in both.
Hey, Greg, do the Knicks have a chance against the Celtics tonight? I think they do.
Check the injury report.
Jaylen Brown's not playing. I think it's the Knicks.
All right, and that is all the NBA talk I will allow on the Legit Football NFL podcast.
There you go.
Thank you, as always. If you're listening or watching for the first time, make sure to hit like, hit subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Check back with us on Friday. We're here every Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 Eastern, and Mondays at 2:30 Pacific, 5:30 Eastern. We'll be doing this all off season long. On behalf of me, Kevin Phillip Fox, producer Anthony Wayner, and Greg Silver, this has been the Legit Football NFL podcast. Have a great week, guys. We'll see you on Friday.